Hey guys, thank you so much for joining me in another video. So continuing on with this series, today we are going to be talking about handbags from 2008. 2008 was a really interesting year because it was a year where bags at the very beginning were extremely loud, brasher, bolder, and then suddenly quieter. It was sort of this like final season of this era of extreme, unfiltered opulence before the financial crash. It was also very informed by celebrity culture. So today I thought we'd take a look at 8 unforgettable bags from 2008. So the first bag I want to talk about is the Burberry Warrior bag, debuted for spring-summer 2008. The Burberry Warrior was a dramatic departure from Burberry's traditional plaid identity designed by Christopher Bailey. It came armored in metallic studs, part of this kind of medieval fantasy. It spoke to the rise of something a little bit moodier, even with like an edgier pop star aesthetic. 2008 was also the year where we saw Lady Gaga, Katy Perry, Rihanna also famously wore this bag. But it was also a bag that was worn on Gossip Girl. It was kind of just this perfect fusion with something that was luxurious, youthful, but also had a little more drama to it. The Warrior bag was not subtle at all. It was quite rebellious. So next I have to talk about, in 2008, Chanel's very famous ankle monitor bag. So only Karl Lagerfeld could turn court-mandated shame into fashion. So Chanel's mini ankle bags, reminiscent of surveillance devices, directly nodded to the tabloid chaos of Lindsay Lohan's multiple arrests. And I think this obsession with the downfall of these very famous women, Paris, Brittany, Lindsay, like they were kind of at the center of this. Is these very young women who were known for living these very chaotic lives. And of course, these brands capitalized on that. These brands saw that these young women were always in the spotlight. But this bag in particular was quite interesting. It didn't just feel like an accessory. It felt like satire, a commentary on celebrity surveillance, addiction. And I also think the way women's pain became entertainment. Whereas I think we talked in the last video, there have been like some lighthearted moments like Angelina wearing the Valentino Histoire, like a large and mini version with her daughter for the tabloids. It definitely felt like a cheeky commentary on celebrity surveillance, conspicuous consumption, control, and addiction. So the next bag I want to mention is the Chloe Parity. Released in 2008, this bag was a reset. Chloe was moving away. I think we already saw this in 2007, but away from the quite like chunky, very like ultra relaxed style bags. Think of the Paddington, the Silverado, the bracelet bag. And this was still quite slouchy, but a little bit more architectural in shape. Still felt effortless and relaxed. All of the things that we know Chloe for, but it felt less overt, less attention seeking than the Chloe Paddington. This style was still definitely a popular way of dressing. Like the styles of like Sienna Miller felt like very in line with this. A lot of the It girls still wore these types of bags, but it just felt a little bit slightly more put together than some of the other styles, but in a very Chloe branded way. So the next bag I want to talk about is the Hermes So Kelly. It is one of those bags that really stands out for being a little bit different. We saw this on the fall-winter 2008 runway, and it was just a fresh twist to the classic Kelly. Also a bit of an evolution and a departure from the Kelly Sport, which was around the 1980s. Instead of the sharp structured shape that we often associate with the Kelly line, the So Kelly had a much more laid-back feel. It's a bucket bag silhouette, think hobo-esque, but still quite elevated in that Hermes kind of way. It has that adjustable shoulder strap. It's quite casual, less rigid compared to the Hermes Kelly. They did discontinue the style, but it's one of these bags that you can actually find on the pre-love market. So if you want something recognizably Hermes, but a little bit more under the radar, a little bit more casual, I think this is one of these cool discontinued gems that feels quite relevant today, and you don't see it on everybody's arm. Next, we have the Muse 2s. So this was a Pilati era creation, and it was Yves Saint Laurent's answer to the times. This flap satchel, you'd see these like tricolor variations with subtle hardware. It was very chic. Compared to the original Muse, this felt a little bit more discreet, a perfect bag that would do very well post recession fashion. It was smart but not flashy. It was collected, not chaotic. This bag would definitely have a moment post-recession. Definitely spoke to that, wanting something that was a little bit more discreet but still chic. Okay, next is a bag that is probably one of my favorite bags from this era. It is a bag that still haunts me, and I was 17 turning 18 when this bag came out, and for spring summer 2008, Prada did something just so incredible. They released the fairy bag featuring illustrated fairies by artist James Jean. It felt just so otherworldly. I remember seeing in one of my art history classes another girl, I think she was coming out of a class before mine, but like I remember seeing this bag on this one other student and just being like, oh my gosh, she is like totally the coolest girl ever. And didn't look like anything else at the time, but it kind of, I think, spoke to what was going on in like the world of art, this more like indie, emotional, a little bit like melancholic, emotional illustrations is what I'm like thinking of this specific period. I see these bags come up on the pre-love market and I just kind of want to buy this bag for my 18-year-old self. Even if I think of current Labubu aesthetics, it does remind me a little bit of this era, like this like ugly but cute but scary kind of vibe. Anyways, this bag will always have a special place in my heart. When I was a little bit older, when they did do the reissue of the Bunnies collection, I didn't buy the bag stupidly and I bought the shoes, and of course my post-pregnancy body can no longer fit in these shoes and I actually let these shoes go. But also Hunter Schafer wore this bag recently and it makes me think Prada is definitely going to reissue this collection. Prada of course loves their reissues, it's Prada. This is actually one I would love to see come back. And then finally, the 8th bag on this list is the Proenza Schouler PS1. It's this messenger style satchel, soft leather, this like school bag kind of vibe. This bag signaled what would become the ultimate anti-it bag. It sounds like a contradiction because it did become an it bag, but the PS1 was specifically a response to the it bag culture. It was definitely quieter, unbranded, didn't have any defined, obvious branding. It was very utilitarian, felt intellectual, was like, you know, something you could bring to a coffee shop, or if you had your like DSLR, maybe if you had a bigger one, it could fit that as well. Like it was just that like indie girl bag. Though it was like actually released to the public in 2009, there were prototypes and previews that were circulating in editorials in 2008. I think the rise of this coincided with how the financial crisis changed consumer values at the time. In late 2008, the global economy crashed. Lavish lifestyles, tabloid drama, the $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 bags suddenly felt tone deaf. Overconsumption, it wasn't, I don't want to say it wasn't unfashionable. People still bought like fast fashion, but it wasn't as like overt and branded. Again, if I think about this period, there was also this like mood of vintage inspired fashion that began to replace the excess. But it was more of a niche thing. But if you had indie fashion and you wore a vintage Chanel bag, that just felt a cool thing to do as well. You didn't need to spend $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 on a Chanel bag when you can get something a few $100s at the time. But I think also at this time, we would see sort of the decline in tabloid culture as having such influence, as things like blogs and Tumblr and early social media would start to take over. Now, taste, not scandal, was how people would express themselves. We would start to see this transition away from girls in chaos for style tips, and instead we would start to see the rise of girls like Alexa Chung or emerging fashion bloggers with their Canon DSLRs. And in 2009, the next year, we would see the continuous rise of this indie girl that was a little bit more low-key, a little bit more brainy, a little bit more artsy. Think Alexa Chung, Corey Kennedy. It was like just the cool thing to look like you were in an indie band instead of following how celebrities dressed. Indie kids didn't need tabloids because they had Tumblr. They wore thrifted cardigans, brogues, vintage Chanel. There still could be chaos, but there was still an element of curation. Yeah, that's my video for today. This is just part 1. There will be a part 2 as I like continue on with this series, but that's my video for today. Thank you so much for joining me in another one, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.